6 American airmen are dead. Their names have not been released yet. Their families are being notified right now as you watch this video. And within hours of their deaths being confirmed, the United States military said 4 words that have set off alarm bells in every intelligence agency on the planet. Circumstances are under investigation. That is what happens when the answer is not simple. That is what happens when the answer might be something the Pentagon is not ready to say out loud yet. Here is what we know. At some point, Thursday, March 12th, 2026, a United States Air Force KC-135 Stratotanker, a refueling aircraft that had been flying missions in support of Operation Epic Fury, the ongoing American and Israeli war against Iran, went down in western Iraq. All 6 crew members aboard are now confirmed dead. The crash brings the total number of American military personnel killed in the Iran war to 13, with more than 170 wounded. This is the 13th day of the war. And this morning, for the very first time, the White House has no clear answer to the most important question of all. How did that plane go down? Because here's what I found when I went through the documents, the intelligence reports, and the timeline of events that the mainstream media has covered in separate stories but has never connected into a single picture. What that full picture reveals is not just the story of a crash, it is the story of a war within a war. A war that American troops are dying in on 2 fronts simultaneously, one they can see and one they cannot. Before we go deeper into what the investigation is actually looking at, what Russia has been doing with its intelligence apparatus since the first day of this war, and what the most explosive contradiction in American foreign policy right now actually means for the safety of every American service member in the Middle East. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to this channel right now. This story is moving faster than anything I have covered, and the next 24 hours will determine whether what happened to that KC-135 over western Iraq stays a tragedy or becomes a scandal. Let me show you exactly what I found. Quick context. The KC-135 Stratotanker is not a combat aircraft. It does not drop bombs. It does not drop bombs. It flies at altitude far behind the front lines, and it does one thing. It refuels other aircraft in midair. Without KC-135s, the entire air campaign against Iran collapses. Fighter jets run out of fuel. Long-range bombers cannot reach their targets. The KC-135 is the backbone of American air power. It is the plane that makes everything else possible, which is exactly why it is also a target. Not for missiles necessarily, not for drones, but for intelligence. If you know where a KC-135 is operating, its altitude, its route, its refueling patterns, you can build a targeting picture that makes every aircraft it supports vulnerable. You can plan intercepts. You can predict movements. You can kill people. And according to a Washington Post investigation published March 6th, 2026, 1 week before that KC-135 went down in western Iraq, Russia has been providing Iran with exactly that kind of intelligence. The evidence, let me walk you through what the documents actually say. March 6th, 2026, the Washington Post publishes a report citing multiple U.S. officials familiar with intelligence assessments. The report states, and I am quoting directly, Russia is providing Iran with targeting information that includes the locations of American warships and aircraft in the Middle East. Not weapons, not troops on the ground, information. The most powerful weapon in modern warfare. The New York Times published its own independent confirmation the same day, citing intelligence officials who described Russia as providing satellite imagery showing the locations of U.S. warships and aircraft. Not vague tips, satellite imagery precise, real-time, actionable, CNN then added a third layer on March 11th, just 2 days before the KC-135 went down. A Western intelligence source told CNN exclusively that Russia is also sharing advanced drone tactics from its war in Ukraine with Iran, teaching Iran how to overwhelm American defenses, teaching Iran how to hit things that are difficult to hit. Put those three reports together. Russia gave Iran the locations of U.S. aircraft. Russia gave Iran satellite imagery of American assets. Russia gave Iran drone tactics designed to defeat American defenses. And then 2 days after that third report, a U.S. refueling aircraft went down in western Iraq. I went through this 4 times. The timeline is what it is. Now, and this is critical, here is what CENTCOM said about the crash. The circumstances of the incident are under investigation. However, the loss of the aircraft was not due to hostile fire or friendly fire. Not hostile fire, not friendly fire. That statement rules out being shot down by an Iranian missile or a drone. It rules out a friendly fire incident, but it does not rule out equipment failure caused by electronic warfare. It does not rule out navigational interference. And it does not rule out the possibility that the intelligence Russia gave Iran was used not to shoot the plane down directly, but to put it in a position, a route, an altitude, a time where it became vulnerable to something else entirely. Investigations take time. This one has barely begun. But every military analyst who has spent time with these facts this morning is asking the same question. What did Russia know? And when did Iran use it? Now, the part nobody is covering. Here is the detail that turns this story from a tragedy into something that demands a direct answer from the President of the United States. On the same day that the KC-135 crash was confirmed, on the same day that all 6 American airmen were declared dead, on March 12th, 2026, the Trump administration announced that it was temporarily lifting sanctions on Russian oil. Let me say that again so it is absolutely clear. The United States confirmed that Russia is providing Iran with intelligence to help kill American troops. 7 days passed. American troops continued to die. And then, on the day that 6 more Americans died in a crash connected to the same war Russia is actively feeding intelligence into, the Trump administration rewarded Russia with sanctions relief. The Hill confirmed it, NBC News confirmed it, a 30-day waiver on sanctions targeting Russian oil companies, officially framed as an effort to contain the energy price spike caused by the Hormuz closure. And when asked directly about Russia helping Iran, here is what the President of the United States said. This is a direct quote, verified, from a Fox News radio interview on March 13th, 2026. I think he might be helping them a little bit, yeah, I guess. And he probably thinks we're helping Ukraine, right? Russia is providing satellite imagery of U.S. aircraft locations. Russia is sharing drone tactics designed to defeat American defenses. A U.S. plane goes down in Iraq with all 6 crew dead, and the official American response is a little bit, followed by a sanctions waiver worth billions of dollars to the Russian oil industry. That is not a policy. That is a contradiction. And it has a body count. The other side, and where they have a point. I want to be fair here, because the counter-arguments exist, and they deserve honest treatment. The administration's defenders argue several things. First, CENTCOM explicitly stated the KC-135 crash was not caused by hostile fire. If Russia's intelligence had been used to target the plane directly, you would expect hostile fire. The investigation is ongoing. Drawing conclusions before it concludes is irresponsible. That is a legitimate point. Investigations take time. The cause of the crash could be mechanical failure, pilot error, weather, or any number of factors that have nothing to do with Russia or Iran. The absence of hostile fire as a confirmed cause does not mean Russian intelligence was involved. It means we do not know yet. Second, on the Russia sanctions waiver, the administration argues this is a narrowly targeted 30-day measure specifically for Russian oil already loaded on vessels at sea. It is not a broad sanctions rollback. It is a temporary measure to stabilize global energy prices that are spiking because of the Hormuz closure. The Treasury Department framed it as a practical energy management tool, not a diplomatic signal. Steve Witkoff, Trump's senior diplomat, told CNBC directly that Russian officials had personally told him that Russia was not sharing intelligence with Iran. He took that denial at face value. Third, Trump's "a little bit" comment, while alarming in tone, could be interpreted as deliberate understatement, a strategy to avoid publicly accusing Russia of an act that would require a formal response. Sometimes diplomatic language is chosen precisely to leave room for back-channel resolution. These are real arguments. They are not crazy. They deserve weight. But here is what they cannot explain away. Senator Chris Murphy, after a classified briefing on the Iran war, told reporters the administration has no coherent strategy. The war goals are unclear. And we were given no answers on the Russia intelligence question that we needed. Senator Richard Blumenthal said after the same briefing, "I am extremely worried and fearful. The path this administration is on leads somewhere very dangerous." These are not partisan attacks from people who have not seen the classified data. These are members of the Senate Intelligence Committee who have, and their reaction to what they saw was fear. Not skepticism, fear. When the people who know the most are the most afraid, that is the signal that matters. Backstory, how we got here. This did not happen overnight. The architecture of what is unfolding was built over weeks. February 28th, 2026. Operation Epic Fury begins. U.S. and Israeli forces launch coordinated strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, missile infrastructure, and military leadership. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is killed in the opening hours. Iran immediately begins planning retaliation. March 1st, the first indications emerge that Iran's strike accuracy against U.S. targets is unusually precise. Analysts note that some Iranian attacks appear to reflect knowledge of U.S. asset locations that would be difficult to obtain through Iran's own intelligence network alone. March 3rd, a classified briefing to the Senate Intelligence Committee. Sources familiar with the briefing say U.S. intelligence agencies presented early indicators of Russian involvement in providing targeting data to Iran. Senators leave the briefing alarmed. None go on record immediately. March 6th, the Washington Post and New York Times simultaneously publish confirmation. Russia is providing Iran with satellite imagery of U.S. warship and aircraft locations. Multiple U.S. officials confirm it independently. The White House downplays the reports. Press secretary's statement, "We are monitoring the situation." 4 words. March 9th. Trump floats the idea of easing Russian oil sanctions in a Reuters report framed as an energy price management measure. March 11th, CNN publishes its exclusive, "Russia is also sharing advanced drone tactics with Iran." Tactics developed in the Ukraine war specifically to defeat Western air defense systems. March 12th, the KC-135 goes down in Western Iraq. All 6 crew eventually confirmed dead. March 12th, same day. Trump administration announces the Russia sanctions waiver, March 13th. Trump tells Fox News Radio that Putin is helping Iran a little bit and draws a comparison to U.S. aid for Ukraine. That is the complete timeline. You can read it as a series of disconnected events, or you can read it as a pattern. Either way, the documents are real. The timeline is real. The deaths are real. What experts are saying, Michael McFaul, former U.S. ambassador to Russia, Stanford University professor, Russia providing intelligence to Iran that helps Iran target Americans is not a little bit of help. It is an act of material support for a war being fought against the United States military. The sanctions waiver sent exactly the wrong message at exactly the wrong moment. Jim Sciutto, CNN chief national security correspondent, citing 3 defense officials. The intelligence Russia has shared is not symbolic. It includes specific location data for naval assets and aircraft. Analysts believe Iranian strike accuracy would be materially lower without this intelligence support. General Barry McCaffrey, retired 4-star U.S. Army general. Every day we delay a direct confrontation with the Russian intelligence pipeline to Iran. American service members are operating in a threat environment that has been deliberately enhanced by a hostile foreign power. That is not a sustainable situation. Fortune magazine, quoting a senior intelligence analyst who requested anonymity, the pattern of Iranian strikes since March 1st is consistent with access to external targeting data. The accuracy against mobile targets, which are the hardest targets to hit, is above what Iran's own ISR capability would explain. Someone is helping them see what we don't want them to see. When the most respected voices across military analysis, intelligence commentary, and diplomatic expertise are converging on the same conclusion, that is not speculation. That is the professional consensus. Why this matters to you, real talk, this is the part of the story that most coverage skips. Because it is easier to talk about planes and satellites than to explain what it actually means for ordinary people. Your money. As of today, March 13th, 2026, Brent crude is trading around $110 a barrel, up from $87 when the war began. That is a 26% spike in 13 days. Your gas prices have already risen. They will rise further. Here is the part nobody is saying clearly. Russia benefits from every day this war continues. Russian oil prices have jumped from $40 a barrel to over $100 in 12 days, according to a Forbes analysis published yesterday. Russia is the second largest oil exporter in the world. Every dollar that crude prices rise because of Hormuz disruption adds billions to Russia's war chest. Russia has a direct financial incentive to keep this war going as long as possible. And Russia is simultaneously providing the intelligence that makes Iran more effective at keeping it going. And we just gave Russia a sanctions waiver, your safety. The United States has approximately 40,000 military personnel stationed at bases across the Gulf region right now. Every one of them is operating in a threat environment that Russia is actively shaping. The drone tactics Russia shared with Iran were developed specifically to defeat Western air defenses. The satellite imagery Russia provided gives Iran real-time awareness of where American assets are. That is not an abstract threat. That is a direct threat to the lives of 40,000 Americans in uniform. The precedent, if Russia can provide targeting intelligence to an enemy currently killing American soldiers, and the American response is to ease Russian sanctions and describe it as a little bit of help, then the message sent to every adversary watching is unmistakable. The cost of helping kill Americans is zero. That precedent does not stay in the Middle East. It travels. The response and what it tells you. The White House's public positioning on the Russia-Iran intelligence question has evolved in a way that is worth watching carefully. March 6, we are monitoring the situation. 4 words, no condemnation, no warning. March 10th, Steve Witkoff tells CNBC that Russian officials denied sharing intelligence. The administration accepts the denial publicly. March 12th, sanctions waiver on Russian oil announced, no connection drawn publicly to the intelligence question. March 13th, Trump tells Fox News Radio Putin is helping Iran a little bit and suggests it is comparable to U.S. aid to Ukraine. Read that sequence again. The administration moved from monitoring to accepting a denial, to rewarding Russia with sanctions relief, to publicly minimizing what Russia is doing. All while American troops were dying in a war, Russia is actively helping the other side fight. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer issued a statement after the sanctions waiver was announced. The Trump administration has just given a financial reward to the country that is actively helping Iran kill American service members. The American people deserve an explanation. Even Senator Lindsey Graham, one of Trump's most consistent supporters, said this: I want to understand the Russia situation better before I comment fully. But I will say this. If Russia is providing targeting intelligence to Iran, and we are easing their sanctions, that is a conversation that needs to happen in front of the American people. When Lindsey Graham says something needs to be explained, the administration knows it has a problem. What is still unknown? 1. The cause of the KC-135 crash. The investigation is ongoing. CENTCOM has said no hostile or friendly fire. But the full cause, mechanical, electronic, operational, has not been determined. That determination will tell us whether the crash connects to the broader Russian intelligence picture. 2, the full scope of what Russia has shared. The Washington Post and New York Times reports describe satellite imagery of warship and aircraft locations. CNN's exclusive describes drone tactics, but multiple analysts believe the Russian intelligence sharing may extend beyond what has been publicly confirmed. The classified briefings senators received suggest they saw more than what has been made public. 3, whether the 30-day Russia sanctions waiver will be extended. Forbes reported yesterday that Trump's 30-day Russia oil waiver may never expire. If Russia continues aiding Iran and sanctions relief continues being extended, the policy contradiction becomes permanent. 4, what the classified briefing senators received actually contained. Multiple senators emerged from that briefing expressing fear and alarm. None have been specific about what triggered that reaction. Until they are, the full picture remains incomplete. Dates and events to watch today, March 13th. Pentagon is expected to provide an updated briefing on Iran war operations. Watch specifically for any mention of the KC-135 investigation status and whether the Russia intelligence question is addressed directly. This week, the Senate Armed Services Committee has signaled it wants a classified briefing specifically on the Russia-Iran intelligence relationship. Whether that briefing is scheduled and whether senators speak publicly afterward will be the next major indicator. Within 30 days, the Russia oil sanctions waiver expires. Watch whether it is extended, modified, or allowed to lapse. That decision will be the clearest signal yet of where U.S.-Russia relations actually stand while this war continues. Ongoing. The KC-135 crash investigation when findings are released, even preliminary findings, this story enters a completely different phase. If the cause turns out to be connected in any way to the threat environment shaped by Russian intelligence sharing, the political consequences will be impossible to contain. Comment below right now. Do you think the KC-135 crash and the Russia intelligence story are connected? Do you think the sanctions waiver was a mistake? Tell me what you think. I read every comment. Your perspective matters to how I cover this story going forward. The bigger picture. Here is what I want you to understand before you close this video. The Iran war is 13 days old. 13 Americans are dead. More than 170 are wounded. A refueling plane went down today with 6 crew aboard. And running in the background of every single one of those losses is a question that the United States government has not answered clearly, publicly, or completely. Is Russia helping Iran kill Americans? And if so, what are we doing about it? The documents say yes. Multiple U.S. officials confirm it. The President of the United States says a little bit. And on the day 6 more Americans died, the administration gave Russia a financial reward. This is not a partisan issue. It is not a left or right issue. It is a question about whether the commander-in-chief has a coherent answer for why the country providing targeting intelligence to an enemy, killing his own soldiers, is receiving sanctions relief while that war is ongoing. 13 Americans are dead. 13 names, 13 families receiving notifications right now. 6 of those names were added today. They deserve an answer. Their families deserve an answer, and so do you. Subscribe to this channel right now. Hit the like button if this analysis was useful. Turn on notifications. Because when the KC-135 investigation reports its findings, when the Senate briefing happens, when the Russia sanctions question gets answered one way or another, I will be here breaking it down page by page, document by document, the same way I did today. The story is not over. It is barely beginning.